Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to be sharing with you the 7 most common mistakes buyers make when buying a home and how to avoid them. This is for first home buyers, upgraders and investors. Now some of these mistakes might surprise you, so it's important we go through them because they definitely can cost you in the long run. Today I've got Vish with me. Thanks for coming on today, Vish.
Thanks, Jill. It's good to be here, and I think this is a really relevant topic at the moment, so I'm looking forward to this one.
Plenty to cover, so let's get straight into it. Mistake number 1, letting emotions affect your purchase. Why do we see people's emotions affect buyers?
I think the biggest one's FOMO in a hot market, especially in markets like we are in at the moment with such low levels of listings. People see a property and just think, oh, this is the one, we're never going to find anything like this again, and then just have this fear and go all in and forget about any sense involved with the decision, right? So there will be other properties that will come up. It's not always necessarily a rush. Whilst it is good to try and get into the market sooner, I think people just get a little bit too excited or fearful in that situation. So that's one of them. The other thing is getting so emotionally attached to a property and just ignoring all of the red flags. So there might be structural issues, but the garden looks beautiful and it's a beautiful white picket fence, and all of a sudden you just forget about everything else with the property. So that's something that we see very commonly. And then the other thing is, and we just touched on this, is the hot market is putting in offers under pressure and not thinking things through properly with research and so on and so forth, which I'm sure we'll touch on a bit later on.
Mistake number 2, not doing enough research. So most of the time, buying a property is someone's or a couple's biggest financial decision they've ever made. So what should they consider, or what are the errors we see in this situation?
Yeah, I think we all, especially when we're looking, like to think that we're experts in it, but we're not unless we've done that research. So, understanding what properties of similar value are going for or selling for in the areas that you're looking at is something that a lot of people don't necessarily do. That's one thing, and the other thing as far as research is concerned is looking at wider things such as zoning of the area currently and future, supply and demand. Are there lots of land available and lots more projects being built? Proximity to amenity, what's coming up. So, and this is especially more so for your investors. Owner occupiers, they kind of know where they want to be, and a lot of it is driven by price. Probably important to note that if you're an owner occupier, you typically pay more for it anyway because it's your home. So, researching and having a look at the area and the market is really crucial.
Definitely a lot to consider.
Absolutely.
So mistake number 3, underestimating your upfront costs. So, buffers and, making sure you've got the right amount of cash available is really important. What are the upfront costs, but what else should be considered for ongoing costs as well?
Yeah, so I think we've touched on this in the deposit podcast, first of all, and a lot of people are aware of the main costs. Your stamp duty, I've got to engage a settlement agent, there's going to be some bank fees. So these are all clear costs, and a lot of people are aware of those. But when we're talking about upfront costs, what often gets missed when buying is what happens just after you settle. So you've got your costs for removalists, you've got your any maintenance that you need to do. But then it's also other things like buying furniture. So we often get clients that buy or come and say to us, yep, I'm sweet, I've got a 20% deposit in cost, but then they use every dollar that they've got. So we kind of have to flag it and raise attention to the fact that, all right, well, what are you going to do once you move in? Who's paying for this? Have you got buffers in place? And we just want to make sure that clients don't use all of their cash because that's not really the best solution or position to be in once you've purchased a property.
Do you have like a generic buffer amount that you'd usually suggest, or is it case by case?
Yeah, it's case by case, and we've touched on this before, but it just depends on the value of the property. Where is it? If it's a $3 million house, then you probably need to have a larger buffer for a $500,000 or $600,000 house. So it'll vary, but we'll factor that in when we have conversations with clients.
Mistake number 4, trying to time the market, something which is impossible. But what's the general consensus when you're talking to clients about this?
It's a really tricky one. People always ask the question, like, oh, should we just wait for the market to drop, or when's the market going to drop? And it's impossible to tell. No one has a crystal ball. The general sort of advice that I feel we tend to give clients is, if you're sitting down and having a conversation with someone about potentially looking to enter the market, there's obviously a reason behind that. Do I need a home? Do I want to stop renting? Am I at the point of my journey where I want to buy an investment property? I think once you get to that sort of point, then you're actively looking to make a decision. And if you're in a position to act at that point in time, that's when I usually tell people it's the right time to buy for you. Forget about the external factors. If you're in that position and you're able to do it, do it. But again, it is case by case. There's so many factors to consider, but generally speaking, we try and make it quite broad.
Make sure they're comfortable and ready to go. And I think going through these mistakes might help some buyers moving forward. So mistake number 5, which I think covering this one off will help with all of them, but clients not consulting their advisors. Who are the advisors that they should be consulting when buying a property?
Yeah, of course, their mortgage broker, just to understand borrowing capacity, understanding those costs, and making sure they're in a position from a lending perspective that they're good to go. And then you've got your accountants. It doesn't matter whether you're an investor or a home buyer. If you're a home buyer and if you're self-employed, my tax returns in place to be able to allow me to go and borrow the money that I need to. From an investment perspective, how should I structure my debt so that I can maximize my tax position? Then you've got your financial planner, right? So financial planners plan for longer term, which involves investments and assets across all classes. So shares, your super. So how does your debt and how much you purchase for align with that overall strategy? And then, looking at the property specific, buyers agents, property managers, there's a wide range of people that you should at least have a conversation with before you look to make a decision.
Yeah, I guess we've probably seen this, how much smoother an application is when your clients have consulted their advisors up front, because then it will take out a bit of that stress or that roller coaster of emotions throughout the process. So yeah, really important to plan.
Exactly right. And I guess just further to that, it's being prepared actually makes you a much more attractive buyer. The number of calls that we get from real estate agents, from prospective buyers to say, hey, look, we just spoke to so-and-so. How's their financial position? And we just go, look, they're good to go. The number of times that wins people the deal, you'll be surprised.
Mistake 6, buying for now and not for the next 5 to 10 years. What do we see here with owner-occupiers and investors? Important to consider this.
Yeah, exactly right. Two schools of thought. So we'll touch on the owner-occupiers. You obviously want to be buying something that you know is going to be good for at least the medium to longer term, in terms of family planning. Where are you going to work? What's your lifestyle like? And that's just simply because transaction costs are so high when you're buying property. So you've got all your entry fees that we've talked about, stamp duty, so on and so forth. And then you've got your exit costs, selling agent fees, again, another round of bank fees. And then you've got to go again and pay stamp duty and stuff again. So you want to try and plan for that as much as possible. We understand that that's not always going to be the case and things change and you have to be fluid, but it just needs to be something that as best as you can, try and think ahead. And then for your investor clients, this just goes back to one of the previous mistakes we talked about with regards to timing the market. Typically speaking, property markets are cyclical. They go up and they go down. It's never in one straight line. The longer you hold property, that's when you usually make more money. So as cliche as it sounds, and we use this all the time, it's time in the market, not timing the market. So for our investor clients, having that longer term view is where we've seen historically they perform better.
Yeah, really good point. And one of your favourite quotes there.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
Mistake number 7, offers and negotiations. So it doesn't matter how experienced you are or inexperienced, getting the right offer in and having the right clauses in your contract are really important to consider. So what do you see with that?
Yeah, so this ties back to the advisors and getting in early and being prepared. So with the offers and the negotiations, it's not having the right clauses. So making sure you've got your finance clause in there if you are applying for finance, just so that if for whatever reason you aren't able to you can back out of the contract. Having that initial discussions with your advisors and knowing what your capacity is also guides you as to where you're tapping out. That's my maximum, and I can't go above that. And just because you have a maximum doesn't mean that you need to go to that all the time. It's still going to be dependent on the property. So it's having those conversations to go, right, I'm tapping out at this, even though I can go an extra 50 grand, this is where I'm going to for this property based on the research and advice that I've received. Knowing when to place your offer is another key thing. So with the way properties are listed nowadays, a lot of them are expressions of interest where there's no price listed. So it's really kind of understanding or having conversations with the agents and your advisors, right, where's the starting point? Where do I need to start? What is this likely to go to? And then again, knowing where your maximum is. And again, understanding when the agent is actually presenting the offer to the seller. You don't necessarily want to be the first one in, and then your offer being used as the offer to counter. So there's lots of ways to navigate that. And we've got a really, what we believe to be a good structure on how to advise clients on how to play that process based on our experience. So again, just it's those conversations with your advisors. It's crucial with that mistake.
We're just about out of time, but what would be your number one piece of advice for any home buyers?
My one piece of advice would be to engage a buyer's agent, because you will receive that holistic advice, not just on the property, but the suburb, the market you're buying in, the intricacies in terms of zonings, and it'll also factor in what your longer term plans are. We're massive advocates for that. We understand that there's a fee involved in doing that, but we think it's worth it.
Yeah, really good point. We've seen some great results for our clients that have engaged a buyer's agent over the last few years. So really valid point there. That's all we have time for today, Vish. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Stu. It was good to be here.
And thanks everyone for watching.